This is an ancient Vedic astrology technique called Pavat Pavam that allows you to calculate the higher self of any sign. So the way it works is really simple. So all you're going to do is take any sign that you want to find the higher self of, find the corresponding number of that sign, and count that many places away from itself, including itself, in ascending order to find the higher self of that sign. So let's use Taurus as an example. So Taurus is number 2, and if you count 2 places away from Taurus, you get Taurus, Gemini. That's 2 places. So the higher self of Taurus is Gemini. And so if we did that with Aries, Aries is number 1, and so 1 away from Aries is Aries. So the higher self of Aries is Aries. Now let's say we wanted to find the higher self of Scorpio. So all we would do is find Scorpio, find the corresponding number. So then we'd count 8 places away from Scorpio. So Scorpio is 1, Sagittarius is 2, Capricorn is 3, Aquarius is 4, Pisces is 5. Then we go back to Aries is 6, Taurus is 7, Gemini is 8. So the higher self of Scorpio is Gemini. Now, if we map that all out visually, this is what it looks like. So we just did Scorpio, and as you can see, the higher self is Gemini. And something interesting to mention, any opposition, so like that Scorpio and Taurus, we just did Scorpio and Taurus, both have the same higher self. So Cancer, Capricorn have the same higher self, Libra. Pisces, Virgo have the same higher self, Aquarius. Another interesting thing to note, look at the progression of elements here. So we start with water and earth, the densest of the elements, and then we go a little bit lighter, a little bit less dense to air, then we go to the least dense, which is fire. Now let's talk about fire for a second. Do you see how the higher self of all 3 fire signs is the fire signs? The higher self of Sag is Leo, the higher self of Leo is Sag, and the higher self of Aries is Aries. So what we're actually seeing here is a hierarchical structure, an elemental structure of the densification of creation. The most interesting part about this whole thing is the fire signs, which is the most exalted of all of the signs, according to this, are the least dense in all of this, which is indicative of like the angelic realms. But all 3 fire signs are the signs of the beast. So what is a higher self? The higher self is an archetypal aspect of self that has certain attributes that challenge the present self or the neutral self into an exalted state of consciousness. So it's essentially a puppet that is displaying characteristics that is pulling you and egging you on towards your most exalted form, towards your highest function. Alright, so there is actually an infinite number of ways you can look at this diagram. You can actually just meditate on it, you can use it as a simulacrum, and it will actually allow you to develop a greater coherence with your own higher mind, your own higher self. And full disclosure, this isn't a full diagram. If this were to be full, it would be cut, or this right here would be mirrored. So it would be this right here just mirrored up there. So it'd be like the same thing down there up there. And in that way, and actually, if we're going to really go a full diagram, then you would actually have a z-axis, a third-dimensional axis coming out that would be the same thing. And you can kind of see how it's like a Metatron's cube reminiscent. You can also see how this is reminiscent of alchemical monadic model structures in alchemical scriptures, of how you have the fractalized, bifurcated, monad, and then it splits. So that's this idea that the triangle is the grand fire trine, is the archangels, and it all starts with the point, Aries in a sense, if you want, but it all starts with the 1, and then it splits off into the triangle, the upward facing triangle, which becomes these 3 archangels, the first splitting off from source. So people with a lot of fire in their chart are very connected to angelic realms. But it's not just the fire signs themselves, because really what the fire signs represent is the first, the fifth, and the ninth house. And so let's say you're like a Pisces rising and you have a lot of Cancer planets, a lot of Scorpio planets, and you have those planets in your, fifth and ninth house, then that is still an indicator of connection with like angelic realms, even though it's kind of on this denser plane. It's really interesting, this whole thing, because there's even like Lucifer, for example, would be like an archangel in a denser realm. He's literally like a fallen angel. So it's not linear, it's very multidimensional, and there's many aspects to this. But of course, this is just absolutely fascinating, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Okay, I just noticed something really interesting about this diagram. So if you haven't seen this, this is a Vedic astrology technique to find the higher self of each sign. So just quickly, the way you do it, you just take whatever sign you're trying to find the higher self of, and you count that many signs away from itself based on its corresponding number. So like Cancer, 4 signs away from itself is Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra. So the higher self of Cancer is Libra. Now, what's so interesting about this that I just realized is that the reason it's the higher self of each sign is because if you take, let's say, a Virgo rising, and you ask, okay, what is the 6th house of Virgo? So think about the ascendant as like the turn of each zodiac sign. So each zodiac sign gets a turn being the ascendant. And I think actually the ascendant represents the spin of your incarnation. So when it's Virgo's turn to be the ascendant, because usually Aries is the natural ascendant. But when Virgo gets a turn, we can see the higher self of Virgo based on its 6th house, because that is Virgo. Virgo's home is the 6th house. So when it's Virgo's turn, the 6th house of Virgo, the Virgo ascendant, becomes its mastery, its point of mastery. And so the 6th house of Virgo is Aquarius. So you'll see a lot of people that are Virgo risings be very, very masterful when it comes to self-care. Not just because they're Virgo rising, but because they have that Aquarius in the 6th house. So they're going to be masterful in Aquarius, zany, innovative type of way. But that is their superpower. So in other words, whatever ascendant you are, whatever corresponding number that is, so let's say you're a Leo, whatever sign is in your 5th house is going to be where you're the most masterful. It's going to be your higher self, where your higher self is sitting. And this is good to check because not everybody's chart works like this, because especially in the West where the houses are all over the place, somebody could have their higher self be in a different place than this shows based on that. So that's kind of cool. So if you're a Virgo rising, your higher self might very well be sitting in Capricorn. You just got to check.